Hello and welcome to All About the Up and Coming Food Co-op Conference. This is an FCI Food Co-op Initiative webinar, informational webinar on the national conference every year for startup food co-ops. We are Food Co-op Initiative, and we have helped over 79 food co-ops across the U.S. open in the 10 years of our existence, and we are currently providing support and resources for over 140 communities around the country that are at different stages of development, from that first conversation around the kitchen table to about to open their doors. So we exist at Food Co-op Initiative to support startup food co-ops at all stages of development. Please give us a call at any time, as this is your first webinar. We'd love to hear from you, or email us, phone call us, but at any point in your development, we're here for you. You can sign up for our mailing list and take a look at our extensive resources anytime on our website at www.foodcoopinitiative.coop. Our support and resources are completely free. We'd like to take a quick moment to thank our sponsors. These are the organizations that make it possible for us to do what we do every day, as well as dozens of mature food co-ops all over the U.S. that are investing in the future of startups like you through Food Co-op Initiative. Thank you to them for making our work and supporting you, the future food co-ops of our country, possible. A few quick points of housekeeping before we get started today. We are recording live, so this webinar today will be available both on our website as well as our YouTube channel in just a day or two. We have an extensive library of webinars, dozens and dozens of them, on every topic a startup could imagine, from how to finance your co-op to how to have your first public meeting to how to do a great grand opening for your store. So take a look, and if you've learned a lot today, please share this webinar with the rest of your development team. We want you to ask us questions. Your questions make our webinars better. So these sessions will be better with your participation. If you want to send us any questions or comments throughout the session, please do so. You can do that if you join the actual Hangout. Follow the links you'll see on your screen and click through on the pop-up for the YouTube video itself. Or sometimes the best way is just to send those questions and comments directly to info@fci.coop. Mary, our outreach coordinator, is going to be taking those questions, and she will be passing those on to me and our guest speaker today so we can answer them for you. Most of those questions do come in at the end of the scene, end of the webinar, and so we will answer them then, but we may also integrate them as we go along.
Jacqueline, when people try to get the question and answer on Google Hangouts, it's on the left-hand sidebar. If you put their mouse over the left hand of the screen, it'll come up. So
All About Up and Coming for Food Co-op Conference is our featured topic today, and we have a very special featured speaker. We have Debbie Trocha with us from the Indiana Cooperative Development Center. Deb and the Indiana Cooperative Development Center actually co-founded Up and Coming, and she's going to be here today to answer our questions, tell us what to expect, and tell us what's new and even more exciting this year in 2016 for Up and Coming. Next slide. Okay, so welcome first, Deb. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Oh, thanks, Jacqueline. I'm delighted to be here and talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is up and coming.
Absolutely. I can see why. Can you tell us a little bit about how Up and Coming came about, how long it's been around, and what the hope was for what it would do and how it kind of went national?
Sure. Initially, I partnered a lot with Blooming Foods in Bloomington. George Huntington, the general manager, and I kind of were at an event together and talked about all the calls that we'd been getting from startup food co-ops and wondered if there was a way for us to partner so that we could combine our efforts instead of each of us doing one-on-one working with co-ops. So what we decided to do was put together Up and Coming. We started it in 2010, and it was originally designed to be just a regional conference for Indiana and the contiguous states. Over time, since 2010, word has gotten out. People have gotten excited about coming to Bloomington and being together as they're starting their food co-ops. And so it has become a national conference over this 6-year time period. We've worked with about 400 different startups and small food co-ops who've come to us from across the country, from Alaska to Texas to Maine. And we have had about 100 different co-ops, startups in attendance since the conference started in 2010. And we are really excited that Food Co-op Initiative has come on as an official partner this year in helping us put on Up and Coming. So thanks,
We're
Jacqueline.
really excited to be part of that. No, thank you. And, you know, one of the things that's interesting is when you look at this number, you say over 400 food co-op startup leaders have come, but only about 100 startups. Now, there's about 140 nationally. That's actually a huge percentage of them, and they come year after year, don't they, Debbie? We see them just keep coming back.
Yeah, there's quite a number who have come almost every year or have come 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So it's really exciting and gratifying that folks find value in the conference and keep coming back year after year.
That's been very much my experience too, is like people come when they're first learning about starting food co-ops, and they're still coming just as they're opening their doors because there's more to learn every year. But for those who are attending for the very first time at Up and Coming, can you share a little bit about what they should expect to be able to take away from the experience?
Absolutely. When we put this conference together, we had 4 main goals. First and foremost was to provide excellent training, excellent workshops from experts in the field who do this as their job, and then also folks who are already in food co-ops to come and share their experiences. So the second goal is peer-to-peer networking. It's incredibly gratifying to see folks from across the country come together and share their stories. Maybe as a first-timer, you know, maybe you have the opportunity to talk to someone who's been there 2, 3, 4 times and listen to their story, learn about the things that went well for them, the things that perhaps didn't go well for them that you can learn and take back to your own co-op. Third, access to the top experts and consultants all in one place for one price, and a price that's fairly affordable for startups. And then last but not least, don't forget to have fun and be inspired by the folks that you come in contact with. We all know that starting a co-op sometimes can feel like you're the only one out there doing it. It's a lot of hard work. So we really look to this conference to help re-energize you, give you energy and enthusiasm as you go back to your home communities.
That is such an excellent point. I love that's one of your main goals, because I think that's one of the most important things. They take away certainly all the knowledge, the experts, but I know watching startups, a lot of it really nourished them and they didn't realize how maybe isolated they felt or at times exhausted with the process, and how meeting peers and learning from them and hearing about their successes and even their challenges really reinvigorated them. And I think it's the #1 reason I encourage every startup to find an opportunity to become part of it. So, excellent. Well, let's take a look at what actually is going to be happening in our workshops this year. Because the meat of the conference is really the workshops. And so if you take a look at the Up and Coming website, you'll see that the workshops are organized in 5 categories. And there's a reason Deb came up with that and does that makes the day more the whole event more effective for attendees. And I'd love to hear from you, Deb, a little bit about what our categories are this year and how people can use those to make sure they get the most out of this.
Sure. Well, we've built the conference around the 4 cornerstones, 3 stages. So we tried to put together workshops that would help a startup group in each of those 3 stages. The 4th stage, so to speak, is running the store, and then the 5th category or 5th track is the peer-to-peer, where we bring in folks who have started their co-op and talk about, actually do case studies. We've got about 42 workshops this year in the 2-day time period, and when you look at the website, each of the workshops will tell you, this is the stage that if you go to this workshop, that it's most applicable to. However, don't feel like you have to stay in stage 1 or stage 3 or peer-to-peer. Pick the workshop that you feel like is going to be most beneficial to you no matter what the stage. So you can go in and out of those tracks, totally up to you.
That's a really good point. I think sometimes people think they have to stay in their development track. Sometimes it's great to look forward a little bit, or if you're a newer member of a board of a startup that's already almost about to open its doors, it's still worthwhile to go back to some of those stage 1 cornerstones and learn more. So speaking of that, let's take a look at stage 1, the cornerstones. Talk to us about what's new this year and some presenters and what you're excited about in this case track.
Well, believe it or not, we actually do listen to your comments and to your feedback. When we ask you to complete the evaluation of the conference as well as the workshops that you attend, we really do take that to heart. We want to make sure that we are providing the types of training and the types of workshop that is going to benefit you as the startup groups. So if you when you see these slides, you'll see some workshops with asterisks after them. Those are new workshops. A lot of the presenters you will see will be familiar faces, but there are some new faces there as well. Something that a lot of people have asked about is, how do you become an NCG member? What does that mean? How do I get there? So we're really fortunate to have Karen Zimmelman from NCG come and talk about just exactly how you do that.
Yeah, I'm excited she's here this year. And if you don't know NCG, lots of acronyms in our industry, National Cooperative Grocers, a really powerful national organization that does a lot to help food co-ops. So I'm excited they're going to be here.
Just real quickly, a couple of others that I wanted to mention to you. Finding Your Co-op's Vision. You'll see a couple of names on there that, if you've been before, are familiar to you, Nicole Klemick and our own Jacqueline Hanna. And then we kind of talked about doing this one. It doesn't have the asterisk behind it, but why some startups fail. You know, that's a topic that sometimes we don't like to talk about, but I think it's important that you understand what can go wrong so that you're aware of it and that you can correct mid-course. And Stuart Reed's going to be doing that one.
That one's going to be really powerful. I did forget the asterisk. That was new for us this year. He did an article on why some startups fail a couple of years back. There's actually been a Food Co-op Initiative's most read article ever. And it's really instructive because it tells you what doesn't work. And they are some of the things that do cause failure are commonly very attractive ideas in the beginning. So it's really good to know those things. I'm really excited to see you guys featuring that. Let's take a look at stage 2, and for those who are past that kitchen table phase and have gone from steering committee to elected board of directors, we've got some new things going on here this year as well. What have we got going on?
One that comes up time and time again, when you get to the point where you're talking about a facility, a building, lease negotiations. Critical juncture, and Bill Gessner has a lot of experience, so he's going to be leading that session. And a topic that too often gets pushed in the background and we don't really pay attention to is insurance. What are your insurance needs as you are in that startup phase? And some of the fun things that you think about as you're starting your food co-op are those departments, the deli, the bakery, the butcher. So we're going to talk about what makes sense, what doesn't make sense, things that you should think about. And then one other quick one I wanted to mention was hiring staff as a startup. What does that look like? And got some Bonnie Hudspeth from up in the New England area is going to be coming and sharing some ideas about that.
Yeah, I'm excited we're going to have Bonnie there. She actually was the project manager and employee of Monadnock Food Co-op, one of the most successful startups of the last couple years. Doors open, doing phenomenally. And Bonnie can tell us a whole lot about that question about how you bring on staff and why you bring on staff, which is a big question for a lot of startups. And then as we're moving into stage 3, now this is on the threshold of opening your store, we've also got some new things going on this year. So some really fun new stuff in all the tracks this year. What's going on here?
We got a lot of new stuff in this track. And this, I think, is very telling that we have so many food co-ops that are at this stage just on the cusp of being ready to open. So we're really trying to identify workshops that would be helpful. And one of those is, how do you run an effective grand opening? What does that look like? We've got a panel that's going to be headlining them. Financial benchmarking with CocoFist. How do you know how well your co-op is doing? And CocoFist is a financial product that allows you to compare yourself to other food co-ops that are about your same size, so that you're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. How do you choose a POS system? There are all kinds of horror stories out there about POS systems. We know that they can be very expensive, and it can be an expensive undertaking, and you want to make sure you have the best possible information before you make that decision. Hiring your GM, critical decision in the life of a co-op. And then the final new topic is, as you're transitioning, how does your social media need to change as you're transitioning from more of a startup to being on the cusp of opening and then opening your store? So really exciting workshops.
Very exciting. And hiring your GM, I mean, I don't know if we're hearing more demand for any topic other than that one. So I'm super excited to see that Up and Coming is featuring that this year. And then we go into your store is open. Now that you're running a store, and this is really aimed at staff, although there are a couple in here that are applicable for board, but this is really meant for people who are running your actual co-op once it's gotten open. And we have a few new things going on here, but what I think is really telling is that we actually have some things that are the same every year because they get the very top ratings and people want to hear them again and again with Mr. Mel Braverman. But why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on here?
Okay. One that's new, it doesn't show up as new, is business planning. And this is not the business planning that you do as a startup, but this is the business planning that takes you into that next phase, into actually running and operating your store. What does that look like? What is the end result? Another incredibly important topic is competition. As we all know, everybody wants in on local and organic. So how do you size up the competition? How do you make sure that you are prepared to compete in this ever more competitive environment? And then the last new topic is looking at the deli. What are some of the common issues that you run up against, and what are some ideas for growth?
Absolutely. And if you're a board member attending any of the running the stores, the ones that I would recommend to someone who's been both a general manager and now works with lots of boards is sizing up the competition is a very important conversation for you to be deeply in with your general manager, looking at the competitive landscape. And HR Matters wouldn't be a bad idea either, just hearing a little bit about the legal side of working with staff, as well as how to creating staff culture and what your GM will be doing around those topics. So, and then our last category, I admit, is my very favorite. I'm a little biased, the peer-to-peer. This is my favorite part of what Debbie has created. Can you tell us a little bit about who we're going to be talking to this year?
Yeah, really, really excited about this peer-to-peer track. We have really tried to address some of the issues of inclusion in the food co-op arena, and making sure that we hear all voices. So a couple that you don't want to miss would be the case study on Renaissance in North Carolina, and how they have put that co-op together after being in a food desert for 18 plus years. Racism in the food system, I think we'd all like to think it doesn't exist, but I think if we're honest, we'll recognize that it does. And then how do we address it? How do we make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that our food co-ops are equitable and meeting the needs of all the folks in our community? Another topic that comes up all the time is, okay, what about conventional food in our co-ops? You know, we know that most co-ops are built around local and organic, but if you're truly meeting the needs of all of your members and all of the people who live in your community, then maybe you need to include some conventional food. So what does that look like? We've got a couple of other case studies, the Durham Co-op Market and Moon Co-op, and then another one, pop-ups, that I'm going to ask Jacqueline to talk about. She's really excited about this particular workshop.
I am. So pop-ups are one of those ways that as a startup co-op who doesn't yet have doors on the store, that you can create value for your community, both your farmer community that you're trying to build relationships with, as well as showing the larger community, your owners and potential owners, what a food co-op will offer. So this is actually a one-time event. It's not like an ongoing farmers market. They're one-offs. Maybe you do 1 or 2, even 3 a year. And the co-ops are starting to do, startups are starting to do all over the country, and they've been wildly successful in building farmer relationships and building community awareness and fun and a sense of community in a room around food, and people start to really get the co-op model. While it's not overly demanding of your organizing team because they're just one-offs. You know, we don't encourage folks to go start ongoing side projects other than the store, but this is actually helping people get toward a store. So we're going to have Locomotive Food Co-op from Oregon with us, who's done some excellent ones, as well as I just got confirmed Shared Harvest in Illinois is also, who's been done several, is going to be with us. So that will be exciting. And I'm excited about hearing from Durham. Durham Co-op Market was the Startup Co-op of the Year for 2015. That is an award given out by Food Co-op Initiative, and they are doing some phenomenal work. So the conference is Friday and Saturday. It's always Friday and Saturday. And so I thought some people, when registering, might be a little confused. I thought, let's talk about Thursday, because Debbie's actually found some ways to offer some some additional opportunities if you can come an afternoon early that I think are really rich. So I'm going to pass that back to you, Debbie.
Okay. Yes, we recognize that there are some topics that you really can't, well, you can, but you've skimmed the surface. You need a longer period of time to really go in depth on, and one of those is owner recruitment. Ben Sandell and Leslie Watson do a phenomenal job on this topic, and they'll have about 3 hours. Could stretch it a little bit beyond that to talk about everything you ever wanted to know about owner recruitment. And then Jacqueline is going to be talking about building a timeline from now to opening your store. Now, the sad part about this is that they're all scheduled at the same time. So an individual person can only attend one of these, but that's the beauty. If you bring more than one person from your co-op, then you can, split up your folks, and you can attend more than one co-op. More than one workshop. You can register for these on the website. There is an additional charge. If you've already registered and decide later on that you want to attend one of these, give me a call. We can make that happen. Not a problem.
And I will have Debbie's contact information up on the last slide. I will make sure you guys can get a hold of her. And I would say these are both really exciting. Owner recruitment, I know that Leslie and Ben actually lead you through some exercises. You will not be just sitting there listening to talk for 3 hours. You're going to be doing your own brainstorming, your own event idea creating. It's a really fun, dynamic session. I've heard great things about it. So those are available on Thursday afternoon if you can join us for that additional afternoon. As well as there's a few other things going on. So we want to mention, again, of course, one of Debbie's big goals for Up and Coming is that you get a chance to feel reinvigorated and meet your peers and have some important conversations with them and build those relationships that can mean so much as you continue to develop, having those peers to call and get ideas from and advice from. So we got some extra things going on Thursday and Friday.
On Thursday afternoon as well, if you would like to take a tour of Blooming Foods, we'll have a couple of vans and some Blooming Foods staff that will take you to their 3 locations where you'll have an opportunity to interact with staff, to talk about why that location, what works at that location, all the ins and outs about that particular Blooming Foods location. On Friday night, which is included in your registration, we host a reception. And Blooming Foods will be catering the event with heavy hors d'oeuvres, and we all know how wonderful Blooming Foods catering is. We'll also have wine and beer, and you'll get free tickets with your registration for that as well. So it's an opportunity to kind of unwind after a really long day of stuffing your brain as full as you can get it. This is your opportunity to kind of relax, to meet and interact, network with your peers, get to know some of the consultants that are there. So just a really good opportunity to relax and get to know each other.
It is probably, it's one of the most looked forward to things about the conference every year, just the great conversations that happen at that reception. And the Blooming Food store tours, do not miss that. They have multiple stores that are different sizes that can really give you a feel for what your size store might end up looking like. Really great stores. So one thing I wanted to bring up before we turn to questions is that, you know, I have been really impressed by how responsive this conference is to input. We saw a lot of new topics come up this year from attendees that came straight from attendees' ideas. We also have had, and I think you talked about having some input that as we're seeing the food co-op startup world change a little bit, we're starting to see more and different kinds of communities coming forward wanting to start their food co-ops, maybe with conventional food instead of natural foods, or a mix, or maybe from a very low-income community. That people were looking for more, that made more different forms of startup food co-ops feel welcome and like they were getting something from the conference. And so I was going to ask you if you can just talk for a minute about how you've responded to that and what you'll be offering this year.
Sure. As I mentioned, particularly in the peer-to-peer track, and let me make a pitch for this. We're going to have in each of the classrooms some pads or some sheets where you can make comments throughout the conference, so that as we wrap this conference up and go into 2017, you can provide us with feedback as it's top of mind. And a lot of the workshops that are new this year came from that feedback, either through verbal feedback or what you wrote in your evaluations. And making an effort to be as inclusive and as diverse as possible in our food co-ops. Once again, talking about, as Jacqueline mentioned, conventional food and co-ops. What is going to best address the needs of your local members? Your food co-op does not have to look like a food co-op in another community, because the people in your community may look different. So I think that's a really critical topic with so many food co-ops starting up these days, and wanting to make sure that they are addressing the needs of their local community and their members. And Renaissance is going to talk about that in their case study. I can't imagine living in a community for almost 20 years where virtually there's no place to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. And Renaissance is going to talk to us about how they did it. They are scheduled to open in May, June, so
Yeah.
we're really, really excited that they're going to take time out of that last initial mad dash to opening to be with us. And if you've been in the past, you have met Malik Yakini from Detroit, and he's going to talk about how we can all help address racism in the food system. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we'd like to think it doesn't exist, but it does. I don't think it's intentional on anybody's part, but he's going to talk about how we can really be proactive in helping to eradicate racism and inequality in the food system.
Excellent. I'm really excited about those sessions. So a couple more things that I definitely want to make sure we share with everybody is that one thing is, I know cost is a concern to everyone. Startups are always tight on money. We're trying to spend our money, our owners' money, very effectively, and we've got a lot we have to do with it. So talking about how to make this fiscally accessible, this is something you've also done a lot of thinking on and have arranged a process this year that I think is the most streamlined ever. Can you talk to us a little bit about the grants?
Yeah, this is really exciting. A lot of our attendees in the past have gotten dollars from the Ralph K. Morris Foundation directly. Some have gotten money from the Howard Bowers Fund, either directly or through money that they've given us in the past. This year we have dollars from both foundations and funds in one pot. So there's just one place, one application. send it to me. It's on the website. It's on the resource page. It's really simple, doesn't take a lot of time. Email it to me. Tomorrow is the deadline, and we've committed to turning around decisions by the 31st of January, which still gives you 6 weeks to register for the event. So if you are planning to attend, you have submitted a grant or a scholarship application, wait to pay for it until you find out if you're getting a scholarship or not. It just makes for a whole lot more work on my end, because I'll have to refund you money if you were the recipient of a scholarship. So be on the lookout. You still got, another 24 hours, 30 day and a half to get those scholarship applications into us. We'll have a committee that will review those. We'll get those turned around and get information back out to you by the 31st. So don't miss this opportunity. These folks are very excited about being part of this process and allowing us to be the holder of these dollars for you.
Yes, and it's very, very generous of these organizations. And I already have a question from one of our listeners. If I'm applying for a grant, can multiple people from my co-op apply for a grant?
Yes, and you can apply with one application, but what I ask you to do is to list all the people from your co-op who will be attending, and then show a breakdown of the cost, like if it's airfare, hotel, registration, whatever those costs are, detail those out, and then in the bottom or the body of the application, there are some questions that you'll need to answer from all of your applicants' viewpoints.
Okay, terrific, good to know. All right, well, let's take a look at our next slide. Now we've talked about grants, and on those grant slides, and by the way, these slides will be available to you at our website at foodcoopinitiative.coop/slides, and I mentioned that again at the end, so you can look, because I did this post on that slide, the address for the application. If you need to go get that application to get that grant in, you need to go find that now, and that is on this slide. So, all right, I'm not seeing the next slide. Are others? Okay. All right.
There we go.
There we are. All right. Okay, so we wanted to give you a couple short, quick tips on how to get the most out of your up-and-coming experience. There are a couple things that we think make it extra special. I mean, you get a lot out of it. And Deb, if you want to share your tip first.
Yeah, this is always a really exciting opportunity. The consultants that are there, as well as folks who are presenting workshops who are from other co-ops, have generously donated their time, and we'll have sign-up sheets for you to do one-on-ones, 30 minutes with these consultants. Perhaps there's a CDS consultant, or maybe it's somebody from another co-op that you really want to get to know, here's your opportunity to spend 30 minutes of one-on-one quality time with that person to further explore the issue that you're considering. So it pays off in the end. It doesn't cost you a thing. It's included with your registration, and it's just one other opportunity to really get some in-depth knowledge on a particular topic. So as you see those sign-up sheets, I would suggest that you sign up for the time slot that you want as quickly as possible, because they do fill up. And if you don't go ahead and get your name out there, it could be that you're going to miss an opportunity with the consultant or the person that you wanted to spend some time with.
Absolutely. I think it's one of the most amazing opportunities to actually meet a consultant you're considering working with, too. You may have heard a whole lot about Bill Gessner and be thinking about doing a pro forma with him, or Nicole Click, and thinking about asking her to work with you on preliminary store design. This is a great way to meet these people in person that you're rarely going to get the opportunity to do. Otherwise, you'll do most of your work by phone. So it's really a terrific opportunity. Couple of quick things that I'd like to tell you that I've seen on all the years I've attended, which is not as many as Debbie, just the last 3, of what has really made it rich for these startups that I work with. And one is, don't go it alone. If there's any chance your co-op can send more than one person, to up and coming. And I don't say that to get attendance up or anything like that. I say that because you're going to learn a lot. And actually, you're not going to be able to get to all of the workshops that would be useful to you or that you wished. And so first, you're going to double the amount of information you can gather. But I think almost more importantly, you've got another person to share that information with, think it through with, and think about what are we really going to take back and put to work. And two people who are part of your co-op back home now who have had the experience and have heard this information and are ready to really work to make sure it integrates into your co-op. I know from my experience going to all sorts of amazing conferences that sometimes you have an amazing time and you mean to integrate all these great things you learned, but you don't get as far as you'd hoped because no one else heard this information and is excited as you are. So it really helps to have someone with you. So if you can send two people, it really you don't bring twice the information back, you bring 4 times the information back, really. And the last one is some groups do this and some think maybe I'm making too much a big deal out of it, but take photos. Take an opportunity to take photos of yourself with some of these consultants at the conference with some of your peers. Show your owners you're hard at work and what you're doing. And also if you have working relationships with some of these consultants and have been talking to your owners about this mystical person on the phone who they've never met because it's usually phone work, you have an opportunity to show your leadership, your co-op's leadership, that they know and trust with this person and be able to talk about the work you're doing with them. So I can't stress enough how much it's an opportunity to tell owners you're working hard, what you're working on, and that there's this information and these experts and these successful startups out there that you've been learning from. All right. So we can't wait to see you in Bloomington on March 11th and on March 12th. The website is www.upandcoming.coop. Everything you need on there is to register, to apply for grants, and the full workshop schedule is also there. So we're going to move into our question and answer session. And a couple more questions here for Debbie that have already come up. Now remember, if you want to send in your questions, and please do interact with us, send us your questions, you can send them to info@fci.coop. So send those along to info@fci.coop. So starting with one of our questions, says, how many workshops can one person manage to attend? I'm assuming a bunch of these are concurrent. So how many actual workshop sessions are there? How many can they get to?
Oh, I'm trying to think. I think we have 5 time slots on the first day and 4 on the second day. So yeah, potentially 9 throughout the conference, not counting what happens on Thursday.
Okay. So 9 workshop slots out of the 42 that will be presented. Again, I can't stress enough, send 2 people if you can, or 3. Another question is, was about the one-on-one time slots. Yes, and we talked about that they had heard a rumor that those existed. They do. And those sign-ups are going to be available first thing Friday morning, right? They can't sign up for those on Thursday?
No. I'll need for all of the consultants to get in and let me know when they're available. So keep looking in the lobby. They'll be posted on poster boards for you to sign up.
Okay. Excellent. One question, is there a chance to just hang out and chat with the other startups and learn from them, kind of in one-on-one conversations?
Sure. We've tried to schedule breaks. They're not between every session, but we've tried to have a number of breaks in there. Also during breakfast, during lunch, during the reception on Friday night. So we've tried to build in some time to give you an opportunity to just, for downtime, to just chat and get to know each other.
And actually last year, during some of our presenting, we did a little breaking in on people's lunchtime and stuff to offer some extra information, and Debbie heard that people wanted us to let them talk. So we're going to do less of that this year and really just let you guys converse. We know some powerful stuff happens around those tables at lunch. We do have another question here. I'm from a grassroots startup in a low-income, underserved area. These topics sound a little too advanced for our group, but our advisors tell us to come to the conference. Are there workshops here that would really help those of us who are just starting out, or are in from groups that maybe don't seem as typical?
Yeah, I would say the stage 1, most definitely. and then those peer-to-peer. And if you're looking specifically for, equity in the food system, some of those in that peer-to-peer track with Malik, Renaissance. We have had attendees who have just barely gotten started, who've maybe had one organizing meeting, and they come to the conference, and that's the opportunity to be a sponge and to listen to what other people have done, to learn from their mistakes, learn what went right, what went wrong. So even if you're very, very early in the process, I think you have an excellent opportunity at the conference to really make some good connections that you can call on even when you go home. The relationships don't have to end once the conference ends.
Very true, and I would say the same. Is I've been encouraging some startups that have just barely started, having some very early conversations. I've encouraged them to come, because I actually think you get a huge leg up on organizing, getting to come up and coming at that phase. It's a huge boon to take that first Cornerstones track and really get to hear the best practices for just getting started and the most important things ahead of you. So I would say it's valuable for everyone. And we have another question related to it that I'm going to answer a little bit and then turn over to Debbie too, which is so is the conference relevant for those of us fighting for food equity or who want to start a co-op? People who are working truly in very low-income communities. Is there stuff material that suits us here? Now, I'd say Debbie's addressed that some. One thing I will say I've heard from some of the very low-income community co-ops that I've spoken to is that while some of it is not as applicable, a whole lot of it is. A lot of the stuff about financial feasibility, a lot of the stuff about board functioning, that there's been as you can do so many different things with the food co-op model, but some things like governance and finance and so forth are really not different across the board. So some of that core material is really useful, and then, as Debbie said, we have some very specific workshops working on those issues. We're talking directly to your peers who are working in the same kinds of communities who are going to be presenting this year. We've got, are any of the workshops recorded, or are there slides available to non-attendees later?
We've struggled with that question. If you come to the conference, we definitely give you a thumb drive with all of the materials that the presenters have given us ahead of time. We are also looking at recording some of the sessions, especially some of those newer sessions that we've not had before. We'll do a certain number of thumb drives, and if we have some left and you weren't able to be there, then potentially we could send you a thumb drive.
Okay. Great. So be in touch. I know that Debbie is working on having a videographer there as she said, for a couple of the newer ones this year, and hopefully that will happen. Keep looking at the up-and-coming website, and keep an eye on Food Co-op Initiative's website after the conference as well. If those come into being, we'll make sure that we have links to them as well. Okay, we've got one or two more questions. So is the workshop time? Is there really time for questions and talking to the experts, or are these informational only?
I would say the vast majority of the presenters, consultants, speakers want these sessions to be interactive. So they're definitely allow that opportunity for you to ask questions. There's nothing worse than sitting in a workshop where somebody is just shoving information at you. And I would say that most of our presenters understand that. Many of them do this for a living, and they know the importance of the audience feeling engaged in being part of the training and the education process. So there definitely is the opportunity for feedback, for questions, for being part of the training itself.
Excellent. This one I think is kind of aimed to me as, will there be info on the Food Co-op Initiative seed grants to be available, that are soon to be available at the conference? So what this references is Food Co-op Initiative annually gives away $10,000 seed grants to start a food co-ops. The application process, and we will have some information at the conference about that. Not a whole session on it, but we do, and we'll be posting that in a minute. We have an upcoming webinar. Our March webinar will tell you all about how to apply for seed grants and what to include in those to be effective and have your best chance of winning one of those grants. We are on the fence about attending mostly because of travel cost issues. Any ideas on that? Well, first, apply for Deb's grants, the grants that she's organizing that Howard Bowers Fund and that Ralph K. Morris Fund have financed for Up and Coming. But yes, if you are really struggling to attend because of travel costs, we at FCI have been working directly with a couple co-ops to pair them up with mature co-ops, open food co-ops that are able to sponsor them and some of their costs. Now, this isn't, pay for everything, but what they usually will do is do a portion of it if they've seen you've applied for the grants and are putting some of your own money in. We have been able to find mature co-ops to sponsor a lot of startups. So please do contact us at FCI. Again, info@fci.coop is a great place to start if you want to get a hold of us. And I've got one more. Are there workshops that are going to discuss setting up relationships with primary and secondary wholesalers? We're getting ready to open.
We do have one that we're working on about working with brokers. That's the only one that I can, and there's also one about building farm and vendor relationships. So those would be the two that I think would be closest to answering that question. Anything else you can think of, Jacqueline?
No, those are the two I would have featured, and I'd say that I'm hoping we can do even more about this in the future. We hear this question a lot, and we're going to try to identify some folks who can come in and talk about the actual experience of a startup setting up those relationships, but we will have some presenters this year talking about it from people who work with these vendors every day, local farmers, talking about some tips on setting up those relationships, for sure. So, okay. Well, I'm going to say we're wrapping it up here. I think I've covered all the questions here. I want to thank Debbie again. Deb is actually joining us from Lost River Food Co-op in Paoli, Indiana. She's there with them today as part of her work with the Indiana Cooperative Development Center, and she took some time out in their admin offices you see in the background to talk with us. So thank you so much, Deb. We really appreciate your time and expertise.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about Up and Coming.
And if you want to get in touch with Deb, remember her phone number and her email are here on the screen. If you have questions, like again, if you already have registered and now you want to add the Thursday workshop or something like that, any questions or concerns like that, give Deb a call.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Deb. And then, so just quickly, again, today's slides will be available at foodcoopinitiative.coop/slides. Those are usually later today. Those will be up. And then just coming up, we've got a couple new topics we're excited about. Coming up in February, we'll be doing Messaging 101. What is it for startups and how can we do it effectively? We're seeing some great examples of startups getting much more effective at consistently messaging and getting across their message to owners, and we're going to share some examples as well as some tips. And then coming up in March, our March webinar will be about those seed grants you asked about. It's funny, $10,000 is kind of exciting to people there. It's a little popular. And we'll have a whole webinar on how you apply and some of our selection criteria and what you can do to make sure you really put in a great application. So I want to thank our support team today, Mary, our outreach and outreach coordinator with our team, and also Joel, who from CDS Consulting, who's been doing our tech support today. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and thank you to our sponsors for making it possible. We'll see you at Up and Coming.